Well, we first met many years ago when I was working at the newspaper. I was a sports writer at the Pittsburgh Press, now gone. And Bob Drum was working with a friend of his who was the general chairman of the Western Open, which was being played that year at the Field Club in Pittsburgh. It was 1959. And Bob was doing some PR for him as well as doing his normal reporting job. And he arranged a cocktail party at the Pittsburgh Playhouse. And he said, "Why don't you come out too?" I was kind of the second string golf writer then. "Why don't you come out with me and meet Arnold and Winnie? They're coming down for the event." So that's when I first met Arnold Palmer and his wife Winnie.
Wow, that's amazing.
I played golf all my life, pretty much all my life, from the time I was in high school. Uh, pretty seriously most of the time. The 5 years that I worked on the golf tour in the middle '60s, I didn't have time to play golf. I was traveling on the with the tour all those times, so I didn't get much golf in there. But once I started to work for Arnold, I had the opportunity, with the membership he gave me at Latrobe Country Club, to play, and I played almost every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and occasionally during the week.
Wow, that's great.
Well, I think the way he played golf, the way he won, and the great success he had, started it all. But his personal uh, personality, the famous word charisma involved, he certainly had it to the nth degree, and he played internationally. He was one of the first players in tournament golf, American tournament golf, in those years, the '60s, who started to play that much overseas, and so the golf fans around the world had a chance to see him. Plus, his clothing lines and his some of the things he endorsed that were international in nature put his name in front of a lot of people, even a lot of non-golfers.
Hmm.
So I think that had a lot to do with it. Well, he loved it. He grew up there. His father was very well respected in the community, uh, and uh, and he was a people person. People always used to ask me about that, and I say that Arnold liked people, and that's why people liked him, because they knew he liked them.
Hmm.
And unfortunately, most of those holiday visits were in the earlier years before I started to work for Arnold.
Hmm.
But we did make a few nice Christmas Eve trips around the area in my time.
That too.
Well, I attribute that primarily to a man by the name of Mark McCormick. Arnold and Mark formed a handshake agreement around, it was 1960, I believe, 59 or 60. Mark became his agent to handle all his business for him. Arnold wisely decided that it was something that needed professional attention. Now, Mark was a relative neophyte in the area, but he was a very smart man and an attorney, and he established all the business activities of Arnold's, and actually became known throughout the sports world for his success in creating the company International Management Group, or IMG, which pioneered sports marketing. But that is why, I mean, Mark's business acumen created great wealth for Arnold.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, I think to answer the question originally, It's hard to pick one. But I was thinking about that, and I would say there'd probably be three. One would be Bay Hill, of course, that he loves his course in Orlando. Augusta National, which he had an endearment for, without question, and Pebble Beach, which he had great ties to in his later years as one of the part owners. And although he never managed to win a tournament there, he played very well there, and had great admiration for Pebble Beach and that area. Well, he definitely loved aviation. I have always said that if he hadn't been so successful as a professional golfer, that he would have become a commercial pilot. He was that good, and he loved aviation that much. I flew with him a lot over those years in his jets, and was totally comfortable with him at the controls. He was an outstanding pilot, and you could always tell how much he enjoyed it, and how it was always fun to hear the flight controllers around the country. They'd recognize that call number whenever he called in, and they'd say, "Hey, Arnie, how you doing?" and that sort of thing. And in fact, the Cleveland group used to come to Latrobe once a year and play golf at the Latrobe, which Arnold arranged for them. But he absolutely loved aviation.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's kind of hard to say. I guess it's kind of not directly answering your question, but I love to tell the story of his 37th birthday when he arranged for President and Mrs. Eisenhower to come to Latrobe as a surprise birthday gift. And that was so neat because she pulled it off. I and Arnie's jet pilot and his doctor were about the only ones that knew that this was happening. And that morning, without Arnold's knowledge, Darrell Brown, his pilot, flew to Gettysburg, got the president, brought him back to Latrobe, and he came to the front door of Arnie's house with a little overnight bag in his hand, knocked on the door, and Arnold had wanted, it was a Saturday, and Arnold had wanted to go over to Laurel Valley, and Winnie kept telling him, stick around, use one ruse or another to keep him there. And when Ike knocked on the door, she asked Arnold to answer the door, and he opens the door, and there is the President of the United States standing there with a overnight bag in his hand, and said, "Do you think you could put up an old timer for the night?" And they had a great weekend. They did not play golf. They just talked, and Arnold said it was one of the greatest weekends of his life.
Wow.
He never talked about what they talked about. He said it was just so warm and comforting.
That's a great
And
story.
he was a great admirer of President Eisenhower.
Was President Eisenhower a golfer?
He was a very avid golfer.
Wow.
He put in a putting green at the White House, as a matter of fact, during his administration, and he was a member at Augusta National. That's where they first played. After Arnold won his second Masters, Ike came down from D.C. and they played golf on the Monday after, and they played fairly, not a lot, but frequent, 4 or 5 times over the years, at one place or another, and spent time together. Arnold would go down to particularly after President Eisenhower was out of office and was living in Gettysburg. Arnold went down there several times to play. And the interesting thing about that was that the president had an old timer as a caddy there. And when Ike's health started failing and he couldn't play anymore, he gave this caddy 2 of his golf bags, golf sets in golf bags. And this guy was so taken with Arnie and his time down there that he called us and asked if Arnie would like to have one of those sets of golf clubs.
Wow.
And he brought them over from Gettysburg, and we put them on display in the lobby of our office here in Latrobe.
Wow, what an honor.
And has a golf bag with his tag on it and everything. Pretty neat. Have family that all lived to be old folks too. I'm fortunate enough to have the genes of an aunt who was 103, a mother who was 98, a couple of grandparents who were in their middle 90s. So I guess that has a lot to do with it because I never overly took care of myself. I was fine. I wasn't a carouser or anything like that, but by the same token, I wasn't a Simon Pure either. Well, I think two things. One, I think they need to find somebody like Mark McCormick, make sure that they have the right guy handling their business affairs, because, well, you see in the news where so many celebrities make mistakes in that regard and go broke and all that. So I think you need to be wise and find a very good business and a manager for your business affairs. And secondly, I think you need somebody like me. And not that I was that great at it, but I think I was enough of an help to Arnold, make his life a little easier. And I think some of the players haven't done it that way and have suffered for it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they varied. If he was in Latrobe, of course, we had pretty much the same routine. I'd go into the office after he got settled and looked at his mail, which, by the way, I usually reviewed the mail when it came in so that it wouldn't waste a lot of his time, and making sure that he got to the mail that he needed to do, and also for me to know what needed to get done from that mail. But whenever any calls came in, actually, when he was out of town, of course, I just kept track of things, and of course, I had other responsibilities. I was the office manager and secretary at the country club, and so I had other responsibilities as well. But my favorite time of day with him when he was home was our after work, which we called our debriefing. We debriefed. He would go up to the house about 4:30, and 5 o'clock he said, "Come on up," and I'd come up and we'd have a couple of drinks, and which he enjoyed making, and chat about whatever was pertinent, so sometimes I was a little late getting home for dinner.
Mm-hmm. What was Arnie's favorite drink?
And in his later years, vodka on the rocks. Kettle One on the rocks.
Yeah.
I grew up in Crafton. I loved Crafton, and I like to say that maybe with what limited success I've had, I may be the second most famous person from Crafton behind Bill Cower.
And you went to Carleton High School?
Before it was Carleton, it was Crafton High School.
Crafton High School.
Yeah, it was.
That's great. I like that.
What's currently
the
junior high
yeah.
at Crafton. But it was quite a day. A lot of my friends were there that day, and it was pretty much a 2-day event. Pretty much a thrill. The mayor was there to present me with the key to the city, and I was pretty much overwhelmed by it all.
Wow.
Weekend was involved a golf event that had players coming in from all over the country to play in a qualifier to get 5 players to go as an American team to Scotland this year and play a Scottish team as part of a special event. And to start the day's to start that day's golf, they asked me to hit the opening tee shot. Welcome, kind of getting the idea of how Arnie used to do it at Augusta at the Masters, and I agreed to do it. I had some trepidation because I wasn't sure the mediocre golfer that I am and how it would come out, but fortunately I launched a pretty decent shot and got a nice hand. So I thought maybe if my getting a little frail and I don't play much more golf, that might be some good memory. Well, the only thing I would say is that I'm a very fortunate man. I was fortunate in being at the right place at the right time, time and again. In the Army, I could have gone to Korea in the last minute. They pulled me out and made me an instructor. I stayed in Augusta for my entire career. I got to know through a little local newspaper 2 people at the Pittsburgh Press that helped me get the job at the Pittsburgh Press. I happened to get to know the press secretary on the tour before me, and when he enough that when he got the head job there, he called and gave me that job, and then of course to be available when Arnie decided he needed an assistant to help take care of things. I was fortunate enough to be there and to be offered that job, and of course, and then last but not least, in 1977, to marry my wife, who's Bunny Giffin, Bunny Horwacht, when in 1977.